rise to speak on the Universities Accord Australian Tertiary Education Commission Bill 2025. I appreciate the legislation to establish an Australian Tertiary Education Commission is a recommendation of the report stemming from the review of Australia's higher education sector. Such recommendations must be seriously considered and not easily dismissed. Stewardship in and of the university sector is more critical than ever at present. Rising anti-Semitism on campuses across the country, the challenge of AI on academic oversight and student learning and assessment, changing enrolment patterns and alignment of courses to business needs are just some of the challenges the sector faces. This bill seeks to establish an ATEC with the following objectives: to promote a strong, equitable and resilient democracy and to drive national, economic and social development and environmental sustainability. How this objective can go close to fix the serious problems in the tertiary sector is frankly beyond me. This bill is about a solution looking for a problem, and a costly solution at a time when the government should be looking for prudence in expenditure, not a bureaucratic pool party on taxpayers. Deputy Speaker, I'm one of the few Australians who've been fortunate to have a university education. The last census shows that just under a quarter of Australians have had a tertiary education. I'm only the second in my family to attend university. The first was my late aunt, as a mature-age student pursuing a fine arts degree at Macquarie University, for which she received a university medal. I myself am a graduate of the Australian National University with a degree in Korean language. I'm grateful for my education, proud to have attended the ANU and Bergman College for 3 of my 4 years of my degree. During it, I was privileged to receive an Australian Government Asian Languages Scholarship to study in South Korea, which I did for a year at Sogang University. I say all this to demonstrate that I am a supporter of tertiary education and a beneficiary of it, of its role in the development of our national intellectual capital, innovation and cultural growth. But I cannot support this bill. I cannot support such a vague objective being institutionalised and bureaucratised in Australia. I take issue with the proposal on a number of levels. Firstly, it will add another layer of education bureaucracy at significant cost, which will not take our universities forward. Here we have yet another attempt by this Labor government to shift responsibility and in turn accountability to yet another bureaucratic, expensive, red tape-laden authority, which I seriously doubt as being done according to the will of Australians. Because whenever I talk to constituents, not one has ever voiced to me their desire to see the creation and maintenance of additional bureaucratic layers at the taxpayer's expense. Furthermore, ATEC will be assisted by the Department of Education, as if that department doesn't already have enough on its plate. Secondly, the bill omits certain components of the ATEC recommendations by the Accord report. As I noted earlier, and despite my concerns, I do acknowledge that the establishment of ATEC is a recommendation of the Australian Universities Accord review and report. The minister has himself championed the recommendations of the report, yet he has chosen not to champion all of the recommendations in it. Recommendation 30G12 says that the Australian Tertiary Education Commission should be governed by a board comprising the Chief Commissioner as chair, 2 Deputy Commissioners, the TEQSA Chief Commissioner, the ARC Board Chair, a First Nations Commissioner, an Equity Commissioner and the Regional Education Commissioner. It was recommended that a Regional Education Commissioner be created to reflect the goals and aspirations of regional students and regional tertiary education. Instead, in this bill, Labor has ignored that recommendation, is not going to appoint a commissioner to represent regional interests, but instead will appoint one based on ethnicity, so that among 3 commissioners, one must be a First Nations commissioner. In the MPI of last week, the Minister for Emergency Management, responding on behalf of the government, repeatedly argued that the Albanese government is a better friend to regional Australia than the National Party, that the Albanese government prioritise outcomes for regional Australia. Well, this bill proves exactly the opposite. The Albanese government's apparent deep regard and commitment to the interests of regional Australia is noticeably absent in this legislation, which deliberately rejects the University Accord's report and recommendation to establish a Regional Education Commissioner, to represent regional and rural students in educational institutions. Such an omission is an undeniable affront to regional Australia. There is a Regional Education Commissioner, originally appointed under a coalition government, and one that we are grateful that the current government has continued to support. But why ignore this recommendation? There's no explanation, and it's an odd omission. Do they not value the view and perspectives of the regional tertiary education sector? Do they not want ATEC to consider the particular challenges of delivering tertiary education in the country? Deputy Speaker, it goes further. The bills have been referred to the Senate Education and Employment Legislation Committee, which is not due to report until 26 February 2026. A number of regional university stakeholders, however, have already raised in their submissions various issues with this bill. Regional development bodies and regional universities, though supportive of the bill's recognition of the need for change in the university sector, argue that this recognition of regional Australia is not matched by the bills. Submissions note there is no legislatively mandated regional expertise among ATEC commissioners, no distinct regional advisory committee, and a reliance on general stakeholder consultation processes that could give metropolitan institutions agenda-setting power. Regional universities and regional development bodies were broadly supportive of managed growth and mission-based compacts in principle. However, some issues were raised around ATEC's powers to suspend mission-based compacts and ministerial influence. Regional stakeholders expressed a need for safeguards to avoid standard compacts embedding metropolitan priorities. Concerns were raised that managed growth and equity-weighted funding could incentivise metropolitan universities to ramp up recruitment of regional and equity students, hollowing out the enrolment base and financial viability of regional tertiary education providers, and also hurting the workforces needed to sustain these regional communities. Submissions also stress that the bill underplays regional research and innovation, regional infrastructure and the realities of tertiary education delivery, which often happens across state jurisdictions. There is also broad agreement that ATEC must play a stronger role in VET higher education alignment, with submissions warning that TAFEs risk being marginalised unless their role is explicitly embedded in ATEC's design and operations, including on credit transfer, curriculum alignment and workforce development. Deputy Speaker, in yet another injudicious use of Australian taxpayers' dollars, Labor has committed $54 million over 10 years to support ATEC's establishment and operations. And yet, when I applied to the Minister for Education to allocate just $100,000 towards the Tara University's campus to help them rebuild and refurbish their study hub after it was smashed and devastated by the May 2025 floods, I was told that the department did not have any funds and therefore could not and would not assist. The Tara University's campus is part of the Regional University Study Hubs initiative. It was established in 2020 as a community-led initiative to help students across the Manning and Great Lakes areas undertake higher education without having to leave their community. And I want to take this moment to acknowledge the work of the former member for Lyne, the Honourable Dr David Gillespie, in leading this initiative. In May 2025, the Tara University's campus was inundated with floodwaters, with the lower levels of the building submerged, causing extensive internal and external damage, mud deposits and rendering the campus's elevator inoperable. With a huge community effort, a temporary study space was opened on level 2 of the building, pending continuing efforts to refit and reinstate level 1. However, despite these attempts to overcome the flood impact and get the campus back to normal operating conditions and capability, the number of students using the facility has fallen, down from something like 400 per week down to around 100 per week because of the impact on the facilities. Because of its location, insurance against floods was not able to be acquired by TUC. The resources and funds of Mid Coast Council are near exhausted, and the community is dispirited and suffering from flood fatigue. TUC simply requires a one-off special funding of $100,000 to enable the refit and refurbishment, to get it back on its feet, to provide the wonderful services that it has now for several years. But this government cannot spare $100,000. a drop in the ocean in the scheme of Labor spending to help an invaluable community education facility rebuild following a catastrophic flood, but they can spend $54 million on another questionable layer of bureaucracy. Deputy Speaker, this bill also fails to address one of the sector's leading preoccupations, funding for Commonwealth-supported places. The Tara University's campus was established in Cohort 2 of the Regional University Study Hubs program. There have been 5 cohorts of study hubs announced under the program. Those in Cohort 1 and 2 received CSPs as the funding stream. Later streams received direct grant funding. TUC greatly values and supports the CSP model as a funding stream for 2 reasons. It provides a diversification of income streams and, second, flexibility in how funds can be applied to locally designed programs that support current and future students. Unlike tied grant funding, CSP-derived income is not restricted to specific deliverables, allowing TUC to respond directly to regional, community and industry needs. CSPs also strengthen value proposition and deepen partnerships with universities. In summary, CSPs are far more valuable than their direct monetary contributions alone. Specifically, CSPs are leveraged by TUC and its university partners, particularly when combined with student contributions. Funds return to TUC untied, enabling locally relevant programs and student support models. CSPs function as TUC's primary bargaining tool with universities and form the basis of partnerships. CSPs are the language of universities. Having them allows TUC to engage as a credible partner. CSPs open doors to new partnerships, delivering benefits well beyond the original allocation. CSPs underpin TUC's independence and long-term financial sustainability. Importantly, under the current 2023-2027 funding agreement, the department sets clear expectations that regional university study hubs will engage in widening participation activities and assist in addressing regional skills shortages. However, the agreement also specifies that departmental funding is limited to student support only and that these broader activities must be funded from other sources. CSPs are, in practice, the key funding mechanism that enables TUC to meet these expanded expectations. TUC currently receives 32 CSPs per annum, a modest allocation by any measure. These CSPs are distributed proportionally across the university partners that TUC has, based on student numbers, the majority of whom are enrolled with Charles Sturt University. Deputy Speaker, I understand that the department is seeking to standardise the way it funds regional university study hubs, with a view to remove CSPs from Cohort 1 and 2. Any move to remove CSPs from existing hubs appears driven by a desire for uniformity and administrative convenience, rather than by consideration of the educational, economic and community outcomes enabled by a more diverse funding model. If the government is set on addressing inequalities and achieving equitable access, participation and success in the higher education system, it should be examining Commonwealth-supported places and ensuring that the CSP model as a funding stream for TUC is retained and that they are provided with an additional 10 CSPs to support growth and demand for its services and to build and expand its relation with at least another 3 university partners. Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, I'm a strong supporter of education because it is a slingshot to the future individuals choose. University education plays a strong role in this. Tara University's campus has been a game-changer in my electorate, particularly for the Manning and Great Lakes residents, providing opportunities for locals to pursue careers at home in their community. My electorate does not host a university, and most of my electorate, 85% in fact, have never had a university education. So when a bill of this nature, with a $54 million vague mandate and a deliberate disregard for regional Australia, is put before us as the people's representatives at a time when so many of my constituents are having to make tough decisions about how to manage their budgets, put food on their table, pay for essentials, I cannot possibly support this bill. Reform of the university sector is needed, but not in this way. Thank you.